Hi, this is Andreas with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. Today we're going to talk about Git, specifically how to undo changes. This is a talk about how to change your file system back to what it was before after you've made some changes. Could be that you added a new file, maybe a bunch of new files. It could be that you've changed a few files and you decided those changes don't make sense. I just want to give you some tools in order to roll that back and not feel like you're stuck after you've made changes and you don't like them. The agenda today, we're going to go through who this talk is for. We're going to talk about the process, the different commands that are available to you, go through a couple of caveats, and finally, we're going to cheer. All right, so who is this for? This is for anybody who has made a mistake. If you've done something that you didn't mean to do, copied a file from one place to another, made some changes in a file that didn't make sense, decided that this particular avenue of attacking a problem wasn't the right way to go, and you're ready to just go back. You just want to reset, restore, recover, be back in some previous state. This is the talk for you. We're not necessarily going to cover what you can do to go way back in time, like if you want to go fully to a previous commit or take one whole commit and make it disappear. Those are a future video. Just if you've got some changes in your workspace and you want to get rid of them. I just want to talk about two terms that I'll use. I'll use a SHA and a reference fairly interchangeably. Technically, a reference is like any commit. It's any reference-like thing, and a SHA is an ID for a reference. So I might say, that's the git SHA right there, and select something. Or I might say, here's a reference there, and that's the one that I want to do. They sort of mean the same as commit, and then a SHA is the ID for the commit. Okay, so in case I use those, you're ready to go. Before I talk about other things, I want to talk about getting to a detached head state. So I've got my terminal here, and I'll show you how you can get into one and what you can do to recover. I used to get into a detached head state all the time, mainly because I would switch to a branch that was not a local branch, and I didn't really know how I got there or what was wrong. It was very frustrating. The main reason why I got into that state is because I was using checkout. Checkout is a great tool. It's a command that can do a lot of things, but it's a little dated. Nowadays, restore and switch can do all the same things that checkout does. So I'm going to give you an example of getting into a detached head state. I might check out and decide to check out something that is not local. I want to check out, how about dot changes from origin? So I'll select that one, hit enter. And now it says that I'm in a detached head state. It even gives me some instructions on how I can make a new branch or go back in time. I used to get into that state because I'd switch to a remote branch, make a bunch of changes, and then not really know how to get those changes up to the repository. When you get into this detached head state, it can be frustrating. The best thing to do is to switch back. So you can switch back to the last branch you were on, and that will get you out of there. If you wanted to switch to some other branch that's local, you could do that as well. Most of your remote branches will have a local equivalent. One thing that I would advise is just don't use checkout. If you can break that muscle memory and instead use switch, generally switch is a better tool for changing branches than checkout is. Okay, I used to get really frustrated by this. I hope it doesn't frustrate you. If it does, remember it's probably because you're not on a local branch. There's a few other ways to get into a detached head state. If there's some orphan commits that aren't on any branch, for example. In general, it's just not a place that you want to be. Okay, let's see what I have right now. I'm just going to run a git status and see the state of my working tree. My tree is clean and I'm on a branch A. That makes sense to me. So I'll clear my terminal and we'll move on. The first command to talk about is stash. Stash is a command for taking the changes that you have in your workspace and putting them in temporary storage into your stash so that you can get them back if you want them, but also get rid of them if you don't want them. This is generally the right tool for the job when you have changes in your workspace that you do not care about and you want to get rid of. I'm going to make some changes and then give you an example of stashing them. First, I will touch a file. If you're not used to Linux, touch is a command that makes a file with 0 bytes in it. It makes a totally empty file with a certain file name. And you can see that new file here. It's an untracked file. I'm also going to change the README. So I'm going to open the README file in my favorite editor, and I'm just going to add some stuff in here somewhere. Let's see. I want a section that's here. And now you can see that change as well. So I've got a couple of changes in my workspace, and let's say that I've decided to get rid of them. I do not care about them anymore. The thing you can use for this is git stash. If you just run git stash without any command, without any arguments, it's going to take all of the tracked file changes, for example, this change to the README, and put it away in the stash. It will no longer be in your workspace. And you can use git status to see that it's gone. I still have the untracked files though. The other nice thing about git stash is when you want to get those changes back, they're available to you. They're in your stash. So you can do git stash pop and bring those changes back to your workspace. Oh, I misspelled stash. Afterwards, you can see that my changes are back where they were before. You might be confused by what pop means. Stash is actually a stack. It has all your changes nicely from oldest at the bottom to newest at the top. And so git stash pop says take the top of the stack, the most recent one, and bring it back. I've got my stash and I just want the most recent thing I put in there back into my workspace. Another thing you can do is git stash apply. And that will take the most recent change and apply it to your workspace without removing it from your stash. So it'll still be in the stash, you'll just get those changes back. If you did want to stash both the track changes and the untracked changes, there's a -u flag to include untracked changes when you're stashing. You can use -u. I'm going to type it out just so that we can all see it. Include untracked. Afterwards, when I look at my status, it's totally clean. Both my tracked change and my untracked change have been moved to my stash. And if I wanted them back, I could git stash apply. Oh my gosh. And then I'll get those changes back into my workspace, and I still have that at the top of my stash. So if I get, say, if I got rid of those changes one way or another, I could get them back to my workspace again. I could do it multiple times. So if you think that you might need those changes and you don't want to quite pop them and potentially lose them, you could do git stash apply. Okay, so stash is for getting rid of changes in your workspace. Let's talk about sort of the glue of Git, one of the things that you need to look at to see the history. And then I'll show you an example of how you might use that information. The history can be seen with git log. Git log will go through all of the commits in your repo to the beginning of time, the most recent one first. So this commit up at the top, I'm highlighting the SHA, the ID for that commit, is the most recent one. Here's the one before it, here's the one before that. You can see that this is a chain of commits, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of the repo, whatever that was. This is good information, and git log will tell you the SHA, who made the change, what their email address is, the date the change was made. It will give you the text of the commit message. So whatever message you type in your commits, they stick around forever. They're in the log. It will also show you any branches or tags that are pointing to that particular commit. Okay, it's a lot of information, and it's pretty verbose. Maybe you don't really care about these multi-line commit messages. Maybe you don't need the author and the date quite so, front and center. In that case, you might want git log one line. Git log one line will give you some of the same information, but just condensed. So one line for every commit. You can still get these SHAs. These are the first few digits of it, but it's enough to use it. You still know what branches point to there. You still know what tags point to each commit, but it's just more condensed. If you want to be really advanced, you can git logadog. So it's git log, A for all, D for decorate, O for one line that I just showed you, and finally G for graph. Git logadog will show you this one-line look, but for all branches, including when they joined and left, and it will decorate it nicely with this sort of branchy, tree-y structure. So, same information, just maybe a little prettier. Let's say that you found one file that you cared about. Instead of looking at every commit, you just want to see the commits for a certain file. It might be that the thing you're looking for is P. P will show you just the commits that affected a certain file. Maybe I want to see just the commits that affected the README. In that case, I've got this commit here and the next one down here. Here's one in between. There's a few different commits here for README changes. So I'm going to find one from the past, maybe this one right here. I want the changes at exactly that SHA. The next command I'll show you is how to get them. So that SHA is way back in history, months ago, but I want the README from that old state in my current workspace. Maybe I just want to see it, check it out. Maybe I want to recommit it. I decided everything in between needs to go away. That was the good one. The command you're looking for to pull those changes is restore. I'm going to clear my terminal just so we have a nice base space. Right now we do have, sorry, that's my alias for status. My status shows me that there's a README and this new file. Why don't we get rid of those changes so that we have a fresh place to work? We already showed you how to do that with stash. Include untracked. I'll just use the U shortcut for now. I'm back to a nice clean working tree. I'm ready to restore. So this get restore is the command for getting one or more files back from a previous point in history. You need to give it a source. In this case, I copied the get SHA from the log. So that 7EABB38, I saw that in the log and I decided that's the one that I wanted. I might have read the commit messages, I might have looked at the date, but for whatever reason, that's the good one to me. From that restore, you need to also tell it that you want just one file, not everything. So the double dashes is to give it a list of files to separate out the flags for the restore versus the list of files that you want to give it. I just want the README. At this point, you can see that nothing else has changed. I just pulled the README from that previous point in time. And you can use get diff to see what files have changed. These are the changes between what it was before and what it is now. So we talked about logging, how to get to the get log. We talked about restoring, how to see, to pull one change out. We talked about stashing. This is generally your best tool for getting rid of local changes. In fact, I'm going to stash these README changes. And I'll confirm that everything looks good, and then clear my terminal. The last thing I just want to mention that it's possible to see in your git log exactly what files changed with each commit, and that's stat. So you might use this if you're trying to figure out how big of a change it was. This, for example, was 6 files with 21 insertions and 7 deletions. And this other commit is 3 files with 13 insertions and 4 deletions. So if you want this breakdown of what files changed, how many lines were added, and how many lines were deleted for each of those files, you can use the git log with the --stat flag. Okay, we've been through a lot, but I think we're donezo. At this point, we've talked about how to get rid of all your local changes, how to look at the log and find interesting changes to you or see what happened to a file. And we also talked about how to restore a file from history if you want to pull something back from the past. There are a few caveats that we did not cover that have to do with undoing, but I think they're either the wrong tool for the job, like reset and clean, or they're an advanced topic that we're maybe not ready for yet, like revert. Reset and clean are stronger tools that do almost exactly the same thing that stash does, but they generally do it worse. There are times where you're going to have to reset, unfortunately, because it resets your history as well as your working tree. But most of the time what you want is stash. If programming is repairing a car, stash is your brake clean. It's the first thing you grab, and it's probably the tool that you need. It's going to get that thing clean. Occasionally you're dealing with something that's a little more delicate and you can't use that particular tool, or occasionally you need a stronger solvent. But most of the time, stash is the tool that you want. In a future video, we have one planned where we'll talk about revert. It's still a great tool in your arsenal, we're just not ready for it yet. So our future video will cover revert as well as rebase. Okay, I think we've gotten through all the stuff and we talked about the caveats. Get your hands hot, we're ready to cheer. On 3, we're gonna put our hands over the cameras and then cheer. Today the cheer is pitter patter, let's get at her. All right, are you ready? 1, 2, 3, pitter patter, let's get at her. Woo! Oh, that felt great. I'd like to end with a little energy. This has been Andreas Christensen with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. Do you have a topic that you would like to see covered? Comment down below. Check out sourceallies.com to learn more about us. Thanks for watching and see you next time.